Hey folks, Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalist, and in this video we're going to be talking about 8 potential barter items, alternative currencies, whatever you feel describes it best. I feel very strongly about certain things being more currency than others, but these are no doubt items that will have a very high value when things turn complicated, when life gets rough. So let's get right to it. First of all, I think that something most of us agree has a pretty solid value is a good firearm. This is something that you need as your basic self-defense tool. It is the thing that whenever anyone asks me about survival preparedness, the first thing I usually tell people is get yourself a gun. Then learn a bunch of stuff, be smart, take care of yourself, look after your health, try to stay fit, but get a gun and know how to use it. That is essential, and it's typically not the first things most preppers will say. Most people into survival and preparedness will not even mention it if they are in any way related to mainstream media. That's a big no-no. Since that's not my case, I don't really give a damn. I'm honest about it. Get yourself a gun. That's the thing that allows you to protect yourself, your family. That's the thing in which you make sure you have a minimum level of freedom no matter what happens. At the end of the day, a person with a gun has a degree of freedom that the unarmed peasant doesn't have. And also, in relation to this video, they just hold their value rather well. Some guns hold their value better than others. If you have a Glock, certainly. If you have an AR-15, these things are pretty expensive these days. Let alone if you put a nice aim point like the one they have there, those things are rather pricey right now. They used to be going for like $500, even a little bit less, not that long ago. Today, no longer a case. Now, the nice thing about a Glock pistol is that it's a staple. It's pretty much all over the world. Everyone knows what a Glock is, and I've lived in a number of different places and owned guns, and I can tell you, pretty much anywhere in the world, the Glock is something that's going to be selling fast, and when the price is somewhat reasonable, you're going to be changing it very quickly for cash if that's what you're looking at. Even in places like in Middle East with the Islamic State taking over and literally enslaving people. A Glock, I remember from a BBC article, some of these poor women that were enslaved by ISIS, one of those guys was willing to trade, I think it was 2 or 3 of his slaves, for a Glock pistol. So for these people, a Glock pistol is worth more than a human life. Usually if you put a number, it's going to be like 500, even $1,000 equivalent for those economies. It is more expensive in these poor, war-torn places. A Glock is more expensive there than it is in developed nations where things are stable. So if you can buy a few of these, by all means do that, because it is a very stable item in terms of how quickly you can exchange it for something that is useful. And the more desperate things get, the more likely you are to have this going for a very strong value. Okay, let's go on. Now, another thing that you most definitely need is food. And food is just one of those things you just need to stay alive. You have to eat no matter what. Crisis or not, disaster or not, you need to eat. So food is something that any survivalist, any prepper will have a reasonable amount of. And my advice is stock up more, especially tins, anything that's long-term storage. These things, when things get really bad, are worth its weight in gold, or its weight in something very valuable. Let's put it this way. This tin of tuna, this is a month worth of wages in Venezuela. Literally. In Venezuela, the average wage for someone working in Venezuela, according to the government, the official average wage in Venezuela is about $1.50, $2, give or take. That is the price of a tin of tuna in the black market in Venezuela. They're keeping people alive barely with rice, some flour, and that kind of grub. But if you want to have meat, if you want to have a tin of tuna, that's going to be costing you about $1.50. It's more expensive than in other developed countries where they enjoy greater stability, unlike Venezuela. Those are the wonders of socialism, by the way. So yeah, absolutely stock up on these. You're going to be eating it, and if things get really wrong, really bad, this is going to be a very valuable barter item, to say the least, right? We talked about guns, you need to talk about magazines. And this is something that many survivalists know about, the idea of stocking up a lot more magazines than you're likely to ever need. Doesn't matter. Magazines keep their value quite nicely, and people sometimes have a gun and they just have one magazine, the one that came with a gun. They don't have a spare one. Especially when things go wrong, these are very likely to go up in value. And go with standard magazines, the typical ones, the most common ones, Glock, AR magazines. These would be the ones you want to start stocking up. The 30 rounders, of course. These are quite handy too, but have a good amount of them. In the context in which we are now, filters. These are, yes, more in tune with current times, given the pandemic. There's things that have been said now that we've known about for some time. At least we have mentioned those here in my channel, that it is an airborne disease. Yes, only now being admitted, but man, this is still ongoing. I wouldn't be surprised if these things just keep going up in value and become even more scarce than they are already. As soon as people start realizing that those cloth masks that they're using are just a virtue signaling, basically, it's very limited the amount in which it's actually protecting you. If you want to go about without any sort of mask, any kind of protection, that is your right, at least in some places. But if you want to stay safe in crowded places where people may be sick, you will need these. There's really not much you can do about that. Either these for 3M or 40mm filters, those are stapled. They're very valuable when there's an ongoing pandemic like it is right now. And the pandemic is not likely to disappear anytime soon. Probably a year from now, we're going to be still talking about coronavirus, so just kind of get used to that. We talked about guns, we talked about magazines, we need to talk about ammunition. My friend Matt Bracken did a great video about how this is currency, and I'm going to be talking with him tomorrow, by the way, 3 p.m. Eastern time. Don't miss that, it's been going great. I think that it's missing some traits in terms of the definition of what currency is, in terms of how it's composed of the same material. It has kind of no expiration date. That is, in my mind, what a real currency should be. If I bury this and 1,000 years from now I dig it up, it's still going to be silver. It's not degrading, and it doesn't have like an expiration date, or it doesn't go bad with time. That is my traditional way of looking at currency, but I absolutely understand what he says when he talks about this as currency. Ammunition is valuable, man. I know that for a fact. It's especially when things start getting rough, when it becomes very dangerous out there. A box of, I mean, you have your Glock, you don't have any ammunition. A box of 9mm, that's gonna be very valuable. A guy that just has his grandpa's shotgun and he hasn't got any ammo left. He has maybe a couple old shells that he doesn't even know if they're working or not, if they're just corroded. I've seen corroded ammunition. I've shot corroded ammunition that actually failed because it was from the 60s and not kept in proper condition. But if someone has, an old double-barrel shotgun and he has no ammunition, these are going to be valuable. These are going to be worth its weight in, I don't know if gold, but it's going to be very valuable for sure. It's the kind of thing that someone will likely trade you for maybe a couple of these. So keep that in mind and stick to quality ammunition and traditional calibers. Usually that's a good way to go. There's also something to be said about the more rare calibers that sometimes when 9mm, 12 gauge, 22, when those run out, sometimes you're able to find some of the less common ones. But it's a good bet that if you want to have something not only for your guns, but also for bartering, for handing over to maybe neighbors of yours that you need to defend your community, this is definitely very valuable. I have a Leatherman here, and this is because tools also have a great value when things start going wrong. I remember talking with Daniel from Venezuela, a prepper living in Venezuela, who I've talked a few times already. Always great conversations with him, by the way. And one of his most prized possessions, believe it or not, is the exact same multi-tool I've been carrying for over 10 years, almost like 20 years now. But my Leatherman Charge TTI, yeah, sure, it's not this one, but the one I keep in my pocket all day long, that is maybe one of his most prized possessions, and I absolutely understand why that is. And that's why I think it's a good idea that if you're going to be stocking up on certain items, having several of these high quality, high value multi-tools, Leatherman, Wingman, and Sidekick. These, I got these for like 30 bucks. Now they're going for like double that. But these are quality tools that are still somewhat affordable. And if things go wrong, or if things continue going wrong and some of these supplies are disrupted, this is going to be something that has a lot of value. Latin America, these go for 2, 3, 4 times as much as they would do in the United States at times. They are just a lot more pricey because people are willing to pay more for them, right? Finally, or almost finally, talking about precious metals, gold and silver. Silver just went like $30 right now. So in just a couple months, it doubled in price. Gold is over 2,000 bucks. And it's just, you know, man, it is what I've been saying all along. I've said it in my first book, the Modern Survival Manual, Surviving the Economic Collapse, which of course I definitely recommend, and even Street Survival Skills in the last page where I talk, I mean, literally reading out of the book. Gold and silver have been a form of currency for over 10,000 years. Even today, it's a well-established form of wealth that retains its value when fiat currencies crumble to pieces. This has happened before in nearly every country at one time or another, and will happen again. Because of this, it's important to learn to spot fake gold and silver. These are tests are mostly for silver, but some work for gold as well, and I explain how to do that in my books, but I also explain how to do that in some of the videos in the channel, so look it up using the search function if you want to read more, learn more about that. But at the end of the day, a couple ounces of silver, it's going to be 60 bucks these days. That is, yeah, that's the way it is. Even if you have junk silver, doesn't matter. That's the price of silver as it goes right now. You want to have maybe some of a well-recognized form of silver. Silver eagles would be a typical way of going. Junk silver is also something you can look into. These are all well, I have a bunch of coins here from different places. US, sure, Morgans, and all of these are Swiss silver coins. Finally, talking about what I believe is one of the strongest tools we have for all of this, which is Bitcoin. And yeah, it's something that has gone up in value considerably since its young history. If you go back to just a few years ago when Bitcoin first got started, it was worth less than $1. Today, it's worth $10,000 per Bitcoin. So yeah, I mean, I've been using it for some time now. I feel very strongly about it. I think it may well be the currency of the future. My advice, as I always say when I talk about Bitcoin, don't put more in it than you're willing to lose, because that's always a possibility if you mismanage things, if you lose your keys, that sort of thing. But having said that, of all of these things, I feel most strongly about Bitcoin in terms of, man, it's something that if I have it right now and I needed to I need to convert it to whatever currency is being used right now at an equivalent rate, like I would do with, let's say, gold or silver, I can do this on my cell phone in just a couple minutes. I cannot do that with anything else here, and it has been going up in value considerably, and my estimation is it's going no other way but up. It just will continue to go up as it's been doing historically since it first got started. Sure, by the end of 2017 there was a huge bubble. It just peaked over 20,000 bucks, then went down back to like $7,000 or $6,000. Still crazy. But that was a point in which if you bought right in the peak, which would have been pretty stupid to do so, that went down a lot and you would have lost a lot of money then. But as things are right now, if you look historically at the way in which Bitcoin is going, which is basically like this, still going up, I think it's a very safe bet, so to say the least. And again, you can just buy it, sell it very fast, which is something you cannot do with all of these such things. And besides that, if you're moving from one place to another, one country to the other, you don't have to mess with any weird banking or just hiding stuff, hiding your gold or all of those things. Just don't apply to Bitcoin. That's why it's so powerful as an alternative currency, and that's the way it's been used in Africa, in Venezuela, in Argentina. Bitcoin is very big in places that have very unstable economies. I think that translates very much to any other place that ends up going through through a similar crisis. I leave the link for Bitcoin. If you want to buy Bitcoin, by far the best place is CoinBase. It's not, I mean, you can Google this up, but it's the safest place to buy Bitcoin is CoinBase. It's been by far the largest Bitcoin trader for several years now. In my opinion, it's the safest one as well. Most people will agree with that. And I leave my affiliate for CoinBase, which I've had for a while now. And if you buy $100 of Bitcoin, they will give you $110 worth of Bitcoin. So using the affiliate link, you get an extra 10%, and I get a 10% commission as well, which, you know, fantastic. Win-win situation. Love those. So guys, that's my take on all of this stuff. My advice is just be smart about it. Use your head, have a nice variety, and cover different aspects. If you don't have a gun, by God, get yourself one. You've been, I mean, it's time already. And if you want to buy extra, maybe today is not the best thing, not the best way to go about it because prices are pretty high. But if you find someone needing the money and you can make a good deal, it is something that retains its value quite well. Buy food. People buy cans of food through the roof. You're going to be eating it anyway if you're smart and you organize things well. Same for ammunition. I'm going to be talking with Matt about this tomorrow, but anyone that's a shooter, you're going to be going through ammo nonetheless. And sure, when things start getting rough, you start using less of it because you don't want to be wasting it, but you still need to practice, you still need to train because it is a perishable skill. You will not remain fast and accurate unless you practice. And you can do a lot of dry fire. That's fantastic. You can use a BB, which I use as well, also helps. At the end of the day, you also need to use some actual live ammunition. Gold and silver, by far the most stable thing throughout history, and Bitcoin, a pretty interesting bet for current times and probably for the future. Have an awesome day, folks. Subscribe to the channel, thumbs up, share this with people you think may learn something from it and be a little bit more enlightened regarding everything going on. Have a great week, and see you tomorrow 3 p.m. when I talk with Matt if you have the time.